Russia versus Georgia, an all-out war. Georgia calls for a ceasefire, but Moscow says no way. The troops aren't withdrawing. Russia is battling Georgia or Georgian forces on land and sea. Reports have said late Sunday, despite a Georgian ceasefire offer and its claim to be withdrawing from South Ossetia, the separatist Georgian province, battered and pounded by days of fierce fighting. And now Russia has claimed to have sunk a Georgian boat that was trying to attack Russian vessels in the Black Sea. And Georgian officials claim Russia has sent tanks into Georgia proper, heading toward a strategic city before being turned back. Russian warplanes on Sunday twice bombed an area near the Georgian capital's airport, officials have said. The renewed intense violence has appeared to show Russia's determination to subdue U.S.-backed Georgia, even at the risk of international reproach, whatever that means. It really doesn't seem to be that the world really cares that much. Russia fended off a wave of international calls to observe Georgia's ceasefire, saying it's going to take out the president of Georgia first. I guess you would call this regime change. Yes, more regime change. Well, United States does it, or has done it. I guess it's time for Russia to do the same thing, perhaps. International envoys were heading in to try to end the conflict before it spreads throughout the rest of the region, a region plagued by ethnic tensions. But it was very unclear what inducements or pressure the envoys could bring to bear, or to what extent either side was truly sensitive to world opinion. Well, I don't see if the world is going to do anything at all, really. Don't look like it. U.S. isn't going to do anything either. Doesn't look like it. The president of Georgia said one of the Russian raids on the airport came a half hour before the arrival of the foreign ministers of France and Finland in the country to try to mediate. The Georgian Interior Ministry said Russian tanks tried to cross from South Ossetia into the territory of Georgia proper, but were turned back by Georgian forces. He said the tanks apparently were trying to reach Gori, but did not fire on the city of approximately 50,000 that sits on Georgia's only significant east-west highway. Russia also sent naval vessels or ships to patrol off Georgia's Black Sea coast. I guess like a blockade. The ITAR TASS news agency quoted a Russian Defense Ministry spokesman as saying that Georgian missile boats twice tried to attack Russian ships, which fired back and sank at least one of the Georgian vessels. South Ossetia broke away from Georgian control in 1992, but now Russia has granted passports to most of its residents, and the region's separatist leaders are seeking to absorb the region into Russia. This all sounds very confusing somehow. It is confusing. Georgian troops trained by American soldiers. Georgia, whose troops had been trained by American soldiers, began an offensive to regain control over South Ossetia overnight Friday, launching heavy rocket and artillery fire and airstrikes that pounded the regional capital. In response, Russia launched massive artillery shelling and air attacks on Georgian troops. Russia's deputy foreign minister has said that more than 2,000 people had been killed since Friday. Most of them Ossetians with Russian passports. The figures, of course, could not be independently confirmed. 2 journalists were also killed in the bombardments. Thousands and thousands of civilians have fled South Ossetia, many seeking shelter in the Russian province of North Ossetia. The Georgians burned all of our homes, said one elderly woman as she sat on a bench under a tree with other survivors of the fighting. She seemed very confused by the conflict. The Georgians say it is their land, she said. So, where is our land then? We don't even know. The U.S. president has said he's worried or perhaps somewhat concerned with all this. Meanwhile, while he's in Beijing, chatting and giving a bunch of hugs to the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, and speaking in his ear. What have they really got planned? There seems like there might be more here than they're telling, perhaps. U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor Jim Jeffrey said, "We have made it clear to the Russians that if the disproportionate and dangerous escalation on the Russian side continues, this could have long-term impacts on U.S.-Russian relations." That sounds whatever, huh? The U.S. military began flying 2,000 Georgian troops home from Iraq after Georgia recalled them, even while calling for a truce. Yep, just fly them back to the war. Dump them off there, I guess. Yep, there goes the Allies, I guess. Mass mobilization is still underway, Russia said. And they said the Georgian soldiers were not withdrawing, but regrouping, including heavy armor and increasing their attacks. Anyway, as soon as the U.S. president talked to Vladimir Putin on Sunday, not just right after that, but the Russian bombardment increased immediately. Well, it's hard to tell who's who here, isn't it? Who's made a pact with who? Who's telling who what? Yes, it's very confusing. Russian jets raided several Georgian air bases Saturday and bombed the Black-seaport city, Black-seaport city, which has a very sizable oil shipment faculty. The Russian warplanes also struck near another oil pipeline which carries Caspian crude to the west. This is a sign, and there are many, many signs in the end times transition days. Many signs.